I have to tell you that since I've started to read more graphic works, I am being rained on with love and talent and intrigue. And today I want to talk about After the Rain, which is adapted from a short story by Nnedi Okorafor, and this was written by John Jennings. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to ONYX Pages. I'm Njeri and I'm really excited to talk to you about After the Rain. So After the Rain was written by John Jennings and it was illustrated by David Brame. But this is based on a short story by Nnedi Okorafor called On the Road. That's in the collection Kabu Kabu. I learned about this, I think this is a 2020 release? Oh, this is actually a 2021 release. So I heard about this last year because it was announced and I was very excited because it's written by John Jennings and I've had the opportunity to follow John Jennings' work. John Jennings is a writer and an illustrator and he's part of the dynamic duo of John Jennings and Damian Duffy, and I've learned about his work because he and Damian Duffy have been in the process of rendering Octavia E. Butler's work using sequential art, and it's just opening a completely new way to engage her writing. I've read Kindred and The Parable of the Sower, and they're going to be coming out with the Parable of the Talents. And it's just amazing to see the way their craft is just adding another sheen, another dimension to Octavia E. Butler's work. So when I found out that John Jennings was writing After the Rain based off of the short story, I said to myself a couple things. First, you need to actually read the short story from Kabu Kabu. And then you definitely need to pick up this book and explore it. So the first thing that I noticed about this book, and of course with any graphic work, you're going to notice the illustrations because those are extremely meaningful. And so even if you look at this cover, what's the first thing you notice? The first thing I noticed were these hands that aren't connected to anything, braiding a woman's hair, these vines wrapped around her neck, and then the colors, yellow and red and brown and green and black and white. And I was just like, I don't even know what this story is about, but I have a feeling that I'm going to love it. And David Brame's art is so evocative. So before I tell you about the story and the synopsis, and before I get into my review of the book, I want to just appreciate its aesthetic because graphic works really invite you to do that. So first, I've already told you that I love this cover. I think that I love the texture of it. I love the pattern of the wrap. I love the expression on this person's face. I love the question in here, what are these vines doing to her? Why does she look so calm? And, her hair is being braided. Is it being undone? What's actually happening? And for me, as a Black woman, I have a lot of memories of my mother braiding my hair and sitting between her legs as she braided my hair on a regular basis. And so that was always a very comforting time of connection with my mother. But what's happening here? I have no reference for what's happening here. The other thing that I want to show you is once you take off the dust jacket, more magic happens. So just check out the book, right? The cover, you've got this black and purple. You have this very vibrantly colored reptile. What is it doing? Why is it there? What is it looking at? And then of course the back is black and purple. And then the colors, right? The yellow and the green on the spine of the book. And then when you open it, check that out. It's a great design. Again, you've got reptiles. You've got a leopard or a cat. I'm sure that there's a lot of meaning towards the symbols in The back, oh, that's my SistahSciFi bookmark because I got this from SistahSciFi, where you should buy all your science fiction books, obvi. So a lot of energy was put into, and thoughtfulness was put into making this book really beautiful and wonderful to just hold and engage. And then you've got the first page as well. Again, wonderful color, and then you're right into the art. So just to do a little bit of show and tell, right? You can, like, the bright, vibrant colors, focus on the eyes, very sort of chaotic in some places. You can see that yellows and reds and purples and greens are dominant colors here. So, as you know, when it comes to graphic works, I'm very much attracted to rich color, and there's a lot of it to be had in this story. So, and then of course, you've got this, like, these pale pastels, right? So after all these bold colors with bold lines and bold shadows, now you've got this pastel, like, why? And then bold again, right? So anyway, there's so much mystery without even knowing what the story is about, looking at the art. So now let's talk about what the story is. All right. Quote, "A tiger does not proclaim its tigritude, it pounces." And that's a quote from Wole Soyinka, Africa's first Nobel laureate. And here's the blurb for the book. After the Rain is a graphic novel adaptation of Nnedi Okorafor's On the Road, which appeared in her collection of short stories, Kabu Kabu, in 2013. After the Rain is the story of Chioma, a young Nigerian American woman who has a dark secret and mysterious destiny that are brought to bear while visiting her grandmother in Nigeria. Chioma's interactions with ancient ancestral spirits during an uncanny rainstorm set her upon a dangerous path that will lead her to a discovery that will change her world forever. It all starts with an impossible boy who shouldn't be alive. His touch activates a series of events that pull Chioma deeper into the spirit world that is right under the skin of reality. Little by little, ancient powers that she never knew existed show her more and more about herself and her culture. Everything Chioma holds dear will be challenged. Family, morality, justice, even her own sanity will be put to the test in each panel of this riveting illustrated tale. So that is the story. What did I like about this? Let me just go through the different cowrie shells. So first of all, in terms of plot, the series of events in this story take place during, I think, like a few days, probably not even more than a week, a few days. And I love that the timeline is really compressed in this story, because you don't have to sort of wonder how things change over time. You're just really in the moment. It's very, very immediate. And so, and you follow this weird event that happens to Chioma. As you heard on the dust jacket, she's in her home. It starts with a knock on the door, and this boy who should be dead, and you can read it to find out why, this boy who should be dead is at her doorstep in the rain. And Chioma is a cop. She lives in, I think it's Chicago. So she's a hardened woman who's seen a lot of violence, a lot of death, and this child at the door freaks her right out. And then she has to figure out, who is this child? Why is he there? And when he touches her, what has he done to her? And of course, because she's visiting her grandmother, she's with an elder who knows things, who knows about the world of the unseen that exists simultaneously with the world we know. And her grandmother is encountering her as this thing happens to her. And as the reader, we are following the story from Choma's point of view. And of course, Choma doesn't know what the hell's happening, although people around her are telling her certain things or engaging her, sort of watching her as she goes through this transformation. And as the reader, we get to as well. So I really like that I like that Choma, who's like, lives in North America, who's a police officer and who has a lot of power, institutional power as a result. I love that she's vulnerable and confused and not in control, and we get to watch her become sort of undone by this unseen force that has complete control over her. I love that we're reading the story from her perspective. I love that we've got this world, this village that she's visiting. And this village has access to ancient knowledge and ancient strategies to deal with this ancient knowledge. And she is completely reliant upon it, because usually it's the other way around, right? The story that we're told in North America is that the African continent is full of countries that don't have access to power and magic and don't know, right? They're developing, right? We're the developed world. And so we have all the answers. And this story completely turns that on its head. Not only do we have all the answers as North Americans, but certainly if you're somebody who has been watching the trends in anti-Black violence and police, it's certainly, the police have all the answers as an institution, right? And this story completely complicates that, asks the question, what happens when our state powers come into contact with our ancient powers? Who wins? And how are you left after you encounter them, like after the rain, right? So the world building is seamlessly done. One of the things that I love about Nnedi Okorafor's writing is the ways in which she really stirs magic and the ancestral realm and technology and politics and society and science, how she rolls it all together and simmers it so it's presented to you as like this seamless stew. And I just feel soup, not stew, soup, like just soup. And it's just, you can't really, you just taste it all. You can't really, tease out the separate components because it's all together, it's all in there. And so the world building is very much like that. And we get to discover this magical world through the eyes of the person who knows about it the least. So as the main character discovers it, we discover it as well. And I love that. And I really love stories where the old people know best and have strategies and will put you in your place, which happens in this book. In terms of the options that are presented in the story, as you know, with this particular cowrie shell, I'm asking the question, what options are presented to the main character and what choice does that character make? And the interesting thing about this is that, so much is done to Choma. She's actually pretty powerless through a lot of not so much powerless, but she's very much, actually, yes, she is powerless for a lot of the story, right? Because she doesn't know what's after her and she can't really control it. And while she tries to, sort of get away from it or make sense, it's kind of inevitable what happens to her as a result of encountering this boy. And, toward the end, she does have a choice, to make, as we all do when we encounter something very scary. And while in some ways the choice is made for her, there is, she gets to choose her attitude toward it. And I really like what she chose. Yeah, it was really meaningful to me. And in terms of the reading experience, it was a fast read. Like, I was very enthralled. I loved the way that the illustrations weirded me out and how they got me to focus on certain things. Like, there's one thing that happens in this story, which is that lizards pop up all over the place. I'm sure there's some reason that I can research and some meaning to lizards, but I don't know it. And I thought that was super cool when I read it. If you follow Nnedi Okorafor on Twitter, or if you've read, more than 2 of her books, you know that she loves etymology, insects and things, and animals. So there are tons of animals, mostly reptiles, in this story. And there's also lots of plants. And it's really interesting to see the way those plants and animals interact with Chioma. It's almost as though the animals and plants and trees and grass and ground know more about what's happening to Chioma than Chioma does. And that's pretty fun. It is really gory at parts, and if you just need to be ready for it and embrace that. So if you don't like blood and limbs and such, this might not be for you. Maybe you should read like Zara the Windseeker if you want to get into Nnedi Okorafor's work, but you don't want to get into that. So I would definitely recommend After the Rain to people who are interested in reading African Jujuist works, graphic works, because that's definitely what that is. And African Jujuism deals with like the simultaneity of the ancestral world from an African perspective, and like modern everyday living, and just the reality that those worlds are connected. So I would definitely recommend that to you if that's what you're interested in. I would also recommend this book to you if you are a lover of John Jennings' work, because I just think, there's just a really interesting thing happening with his work right now as he writes from the works of Black science fiction and fantasy writers who are femme and women. So I think that's pretty exciting to see that dialogue. And one of the things that Dr. Okorafor said, when I asked her about John Jennings and this particular work, she said that she trusted John Jennings with her story, with her short story. And because of that trust, because she knew that his take on the story would honor hers, it felt great and good to see him sort of riff off of her work. And I'm really interested in authors and illustrators who collaborate with each other to reverberate off of each other's works. I think that returning to a story and seeing it from a different perspective, or seeing it told in a different way, can be extremely enjoyable for the reader and very meaningful. If you read this story, I would also suggest that you read the short story In Kabu Kabu and compare and contrast. How did the story land on you when it was just words? How does it land on you through illustration? And how are the stories that are told any different because of the medium through which they're told? So yes, I would definitely recommend this one. And if you've read it, I'd love to know what your favorite part was, what your favorite panel was, and what you thought of it overall. So if you've watched this video all the way to the end, I would love you to include a plant, something yellow, and something red, and to tell me about your relationship with rain. Did you like rain growing up? Do you like it now? Does rain spook you out? And what do you feel like, what happens after the rain in your life, in your neighborhood? I'm very curious. I am going to shout out a blogger. The blogger that I'm going to shout out is Nikita Blair. She's a blogger she's a book reviewer, and she has a blog called Blair Necessities, and she is out of Guyana. I met her through Quarantine Pages, and she is an emerging writer, and I love the way that she writes about books, and I just can't wait to see what she writes and see it as it comes into the world. So I am going to include a link to her website. So definitely go and check her out. And thank you very much for watching this review. Remember to read with purpose. And when you do, please tell me about it in the comments. I'll see you next time. Bye.